Hello and welcome to Environmental Health Issues and week 1, which is the beginning of a theme around sustainability for the next 3 weeks. That's what we'll be talking about. And the concept of sustainability has been around for a very long time. The word sustainable has been around since 1400s. But we use sustainability or sustainable development. They're the commonly used words, and we use those interchangeably. So whether you're writing about sustainability or sustainable development in this subject, that's what we'll be doing. So there are resources for you to read and watch and some questions for you to think about and discuss with your colleagues, as there is every week. This is something that happens every week. So sustainability is both a process and an outcome, and it's a process of change. And hopefully with this process we improve the long-term health of ecological systems, and so humans, because of course we are part of our own human and ecological systems. This concept re-emerged first again in the 1970s. There was a think tank called the Club of Rome, a group of businessmen, and they hypothesised that if the population kept rising as it had been, and if our consumption patterns continued on, then the Earth would run out of resources quite soon. So they employed some scientists who developed 12 scenarios models looking at population rises and consumption patterns, positively and negative, to test this hypothesis. And they found, of course, that there were limits to growth, and that's the title of the book that presents this information first in the 1970s. The lead scientist or lead writer of that is Donella Meadows, and that resource is easily available in libraries and so on. A little bit later than that, in 1987, the World Commission on Environment and Development, so it's an international body, commonly known as the Brundtland Commission, because it was headed up by the Prime Minister of Norway, who was called Brundtland, and they came up with a definition of sustainable development. That's very commonly used on the international stage. So the process of sustainability is underpinned by a number of key principles, and the first is social justice, and that's an expression of policy development that addresses issues of equity and inequity. There's intergenerational equity, which means that we think about not just this generation, but generations hence, and also the other principle is the precautionary principle, meaning that we don't continue just to do things without knowing what the risks are. If we think at any time that there may be risks to using certain technologies, for example, then we should stop that and wait until we have the evidence. So it's being cautious, or the precautionary principle. And of course we want to conserve biological and cultural diversity, very important in terms of thinking about the process of sustainability. And so these principles help us prevent or reverse adverse impacts of human activities on ecosystems, and so our house, if you like, the planet. But we want to do that being, equitable in all societies and within all groups of societies. So there is a substantial body of evidence, and you will find more and more about this as you go through the the subject, that human health and human survival is under greater threat than previously thought. So due to the very rapid changes that are happening in terms of the global ecology, and there are new challenges. So these rapid changes, the most obvious example is climate change, but of course there are many others in terms of pollution, toxicity and so on. So degradation of our ecosystems on which our lives depend is having and will increasingly have an impact on human health and survival in some cases. And so there are four major areas for us to consider. And of course there are global and local implications or impacts. There are direct and indirect impacts, short and long-term impacts, negligible and devastating effects of degraded ecosystems, and so human health. So these degraded ecosystems exist, and there are people whose health is suffering because of that. The health burden, though, is experienced unequally, and we will be talking about this when we talk about environmental justice, social justice, but also environmental justice. And the important thing for health professionals, I think, is to realise how important our role is in understanding these things and building resilience to tackle these problems, because the burden on the health sector is mounting, and there are new challenges and changes that we need to think about as health professionals. So students in the past have really enjoyed this subject. The content is so relevant to us, and I hope you enjoy it just as much. And you'll be hearing from me again. So good luck for this week and the coming weeks. And I look forward to seeing your discussions online. Thanks.